Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. So this video is going to be another foster care related video, and this is going to be talking about some questions that I get asked all the time. People ask me these questions on a daily basis. So I'm going to be answering some of those questions, and this is going to be in like a Q&A type of style with another YouTuber. Her name is Kate, and her channel is called Love Mother Beauty. And she's a foster mother, and she dedicates her YouTube channel to talking about her experiences as a foster mom. So we decided to exchange some questions for one another. So we're gonna combine our videos together, and she's gonna put this video on her channel and I'm gonna put this video on my channel. But if you are looking to be like a foster parent, if you are just wanting to know more about the experience of being a foster parent, definitely check out her channel. I will leave a link to it directly below so you can go straight from this video to her channel. But I really like her, and I like her content because she's very honest and straightforward, and I really appreciate that about her. Like, she doesn't really like sugarcoat things, and I really appreciate her honesty. I think you will too. So definitely check out her videos. So let's get started with her questions. Again, these are things that I get asked all the time, so I hope that these can answer some of your questions if you've been wondering. So her first question is, what age did you come into foster care? So I went in when I was 9 years old, and I stayed for a couple of months, and then I went back with my mom. And then I ended up going back into foster care at age 11. So at this point, when I was 11, I went into foster care with my two little brothers. When I had went in when I was 9 years old, I went into foster care by myself. Her next question, and this is probably the most important question in my opinion: how has being in foster care affected your life overall? So I'm going to be completely honest with you. Being in foster care has definitely had a huge effect on my life, and to me, I consider it something that is 100% a part of my identity and who I am. And I don't like when people try to make it out like once you're an adult you just can let things go and move past it and create a whole new life for yourself and basically just kind of forget about your past or like traumatic things that have happened to you. I don't agree with that at all, especially in my case. I feel like being in foster care is something that I will carry with me for the rest of my life, and again, it's something that is just a part of who I am. And it's kind of difficult, and maybe you'd understand this if you have been in foster care. It's difficult to explain your situation to other people, like friends or coworkers, especially when things get brought up about like your family or your mom and dad, things like that. So even to this day, I kind of have trouble opening that part of my life up to people, kind of figuring out what I should say. So it's something I don't really talk about in my day-to-day life. I just try not to bring things like that up. Or if I'm referring to like my mom, I'll just basically be referring to my foster mom, and people won't know it. So I think that's something that people who've been in foster care probably have trouble with in their adult life, or just in life in general, trying to explain their situation to the outside world. And also a big thing that foster care has had an effect on me is being able to trust people and being able to feel open to people and letting people close to me, because in my experience I got moved around a lot and I had trusted a lot of people, and in doing so my trust was broken, even with my own family and with my own mother. And just growing up, my entire childhood was basically just having my trust broken and kind of seeing the ugly side of people, and seeing how people you think have it all together, or people you think are nice or good people, a lot of times end up not being good people. And that may sound like such a downer, but that was my experience, and I feel like that's definitely had an impact on me and my relationships and being able to have relationships with people. It's just not easy to trust people. It's not easy to open up to people, and I feel like that's probably a lot of people who've been in foster care. I feel like that's probably their experience as well, because your trust just gets constantly broken. You get let down by people, and it's just hard not to learn that and have that ingrained in your mind. Like I said, I don't like when people try to act like you can just move on from something like this. You can't just move on from trauma. It's a part of you. It's like ingrained in you. And I've talked to several people about this who have been in foster care. It's just a part of who you are. It's a part of you for life. Okay, so her next question: what were the most difficult things about being in foster care? I felt like it was really hard to be happy because my situation just felt so uncertain, and again, I couldn't trust people, and I just felt so lost and alone and abandoned. Like, I think abandonment is another huge issue that I've carried into my adulthood, but it was hard to be able to feel happiness, and it was hard to be able to feel a sense of normalcy or complacency. I just always felt lost, and like I couldn't get comfortable, and I couldn't just settle down somewhere. And it was just really hard, especially at school and with trying to make friends and stuff, because I had an understanding of life that no one else my age had, and I had to be such an adult at such a young age. And so I always felt set apart from my peers, and that was really hard. It was so difficult to try and relate to people my age, because while they were able to go have fun and be with their family and friends and just be children, I felt like I was robbed of that. Again, it goes back into just kind of feeling like I couldn't be happy, because I felt like any time that I was able to be happy, something bad would happen. It just felt like things were constantly going bad and going wrong in my situation, and so I didn't want to get my hopes up about anything. So much of the feeling that I had was just feelings of hopelessness, because I had no control over my situation. I had no control over anything at all. So I kind of relate my foster care experience a lot with being a prisoner, and it sucks because as a foster kid, you feel like you're being punished for your parents' mistakes or for the downfalls of your foster parents who don't have the ability to take care of you. So when that happens, you end up getting moved. So again, it's like a punishment in a way. So I really feel bad for foster kids because they're the ones being punished in this situation. And then also I want to mention school being a difficult thing about foster care, because there were a lot of times I would get behind, and then there would be times when I had time to get acclimated to a school, and I was really smart and I really enjoyed making good grades. So some schools I'd make like straight A's, and then I'd get thrown into another school and not make good grades at all. Like, I'd be barely passing because they'd be learning different things, like things that I hadn't learned before, or I'd missed so much school. So it was hard for me to find an identity of myself, of am I smart or am I stupid? So it's just like the instability of it all, especially when it comes to school, doesn't instill a lot of confidence. And I think confidence and feeling a sense of security in who I was or with my identity at all was like nearly impossible, because I had no strong foundation of any type of security or identity. That's been something that also has kind of held me back in my adult life, is just trying to figure out who I am. So her next question is, how many foster homes were you in? So in total, I was in 9 different foster homes, but that doesn't count like the other people I've lived with, such as like family members or just like random people I'd end up staying with because of the instability of my home life. Her next question, why did you move foster homes? So when I was 9, when I first went into foster care, I was in 2 different foster homes. So the first foster home I was in, I just didn't feel like I was a good fit for that family. I was very unhappy and I just did not enjoy being there. And so I think the foster mom could sense that. She came to me one day and told me, I think we're gonna have you go to a different home. I know you're not happy here. So that was basically why I got moved to a different home. And it was much better at my next foster home. I felt more at ease there, and I felt more like I could just be a kid and be normal for the most part. So it was a good choice to have me move to a different foster home at that point. And so when I went back in when I was 11, obviously I went in with my 2 little brothers. And so the reason we got moved around so many different times is because there were 3 of us, and that was always the problem. I think taking on 3 kids was just too much for people to handle. And so each foster family would say like, we'll keep your brothers, or we'll just keep you, but we can't keep, you know, all of you guys because it's just too much. So that's why we got moved around. How did you feel when entering a new foster home? I felt very uncomfortable and very sad. Moving was like the worst thing to happen. I never liked moving, and it always just felt really crappy because it would just kind of feel like, how long are we gonna be here? And I didn't know how to settle in and feel comfortable and feel like I was going to be there for a while. I didn't really even want to unpack my things at a certain point because I was just waiting for the next time we would end up getting moved. So another thing is, I just felt like I didn't know what to do with myself. I didn't have like a space that I felt like was mine, obviously being in someone else's home. I didn't feel like I could just go sit on the couch, go get in the fridge, eat a snack, and watch TV. It just wasn't like that. I didn't feel comfortable. Basically, the most I felt was just overwhelmed because there's so much newness and so much kind of trauma with knowing you're moving and you're probably gonna move again, and you're in a new place, you're in a new town. Usually you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're gonna go to school. So it's a lot of feelings of being overwhelmed and being scared and being uncomfortable. What is your opinion on keeping siblings together in foster care? So I think it's the best to keep them together, because if you have a sibling, then you have a little piece of home with you, and so you're not so alone. And I really wanted my brothers to be with me because I didn't want them to end up in another home and they were being mistreated and I didn't know about it and I couldn't help them. That was my biggest fear, was just the fact that if they went somewhere else, I wouldn't know if they were okay. And I think it's hard in general for kids in foster care when they're separated from their siblings. The communication can kind of be lacking. Sometimes these kids don't know where their brothers and sisters are at all. They don't know what town they're in. They don't know if they're okay. They don't know if they're safe. It's just so scary. So yes, I'm definitely an advocate for keeping kids together. And if that can't happen, then I think that there should definitely be an established sort of communication between the siblings. What was something a foster parent did for you that made you feel special? So the foster family that I stayed with for the longest, so one summer, this was my 8th grade year, they took us all to Washington, D.C. for like a week, and it was so much fun. I'm so glad I got that experience. Something I'll never forget, and I think a lot of foster kids don't get a chance to really travel, so that definitely made me feel special, and it's something that I can look back on and have memories of. They also came to my college graduation a couple months ago. Definitely made me feel super special to have them there. What do you think makes a good foster parent? So obviously no one's perfect, and I get a lot of people asking me questions about like, am I doing this wrong? Will I be a horrible foster parent if I do this? And I just think someone who is caring and who cares about these kids, that's gonna genuinely show through. And I've heard a lot of stories of people who do foster care for money, which is ridiculous, or people who just are obviously in it for the wrong reasons or in it for their own personal gain. Those are not good foster parents. I think you have to come into it with an open heart and kind of a selfless heart. Just be willing to try. No one's perfect, you're gonna make mistakes, but I just think someone who, again, is just in it for the right reasons and just wants to genuinely help someone better their lives and give them a little bit of stability and give them some hope, then I think that's the best that you can do. Also, something that I think makes a good foster parent is someone who is accepting of that foster child for who they are and for the things that they've gone through that have made them the person that they are. So like I said before, there came a time when I just learned to shut down and shut off, and I had a foster mom who really tried to break me of that, and so I opened up to her, and then through that she ended up breaking my trust. And so it just like came back to me learning not to trust people. So I think you have to be patient with these kids and you have to be understanding of where they're coming from. You cannot force them to be something they're not. Like, you can't force them into this mold of what you think a family should look like or what a perfect like foster family setup should be like. These kids have come from some really traumatic things, and you have to just like be open and accepting of that person. You cannot be trying to change them. If you think a kid needs help, definitely get them the help that they need. Just don't be so forceful with them if they're kind of kids who aren't super receptive to you, or, you know, perfect kids. They've been through a lot, so obviously it's gonna take a foster parent who is super understanding of that situation. What are some tips that you can give new foster parents on creating an inviting home for a child? And then she also says, what are some things a foster parent can say to a new foster child to make them feel more comfortable? So I actually have gotten asked this question a lot, basically on what to do when the child first gets placed, what you should say, how to make them feel more comfortable. And I gotta say, I think it's just gonna really be kind of awkward for that child, and I think it's just gonna depend on them personally. Some kids are a lot more easygoing than others, and some have just been kind of traumatized to the point where they may not be super receptive to you and to your home. They may be very guarded. And so I think the best thing you can do, I think this is really helpful, is if you have a space for that child and you're like, this is your space. So you have a space for them to kind of go be by themselves and get comfortable, because that was my problem, is I didn't, like I said before, I didn't know how to just go in the living room and like plop my feet up on the couch and just get comfortable. I needed just kind of a space that was mine and that I could just feel like this was mine. And then another thing that always made me feel more comfortable is if the foster parent would take me around the town and get me kind of used to like where things were, because a lot of times it's super disorienting, like coming to a place you've never been before and you just have no idea like where you're at. I also think it's helpful to like go by the school that they're gonna go to and just be like, hey, this is your school, this is where you're gonna go, so like it's not so overwhelming the very first day that they have to go to school. They can kind of see it beforehand. Another thing I think is helpful is like taking them to the store and getting them some food that they like to eat, and I think that's also a good like icebreaker. If they can eat the foods that they like to eat, then that's just a piece of home, basically. And as far as what you can say to them, I think it's just good to talk to them and kind of just get to know them, show an interest in them and an interest in where they come from. Definitely share some things about you and why you're a foster parent. I think it's good to talk about the whole situation, and not talking is probably the worst thing that you can do. I had a couple foster parents who had been in foster care themselves, so they would tell me a little bit about that and just about them and their lives, and that would make me feel more comfortable with them. So that is it. That's all the questions she asked me. So the second part of this video is going to be her answering the questions that I have asked her about being a foster parent.
And then she also asked me some questions. The first question she asked me was, what age group do you feel you work best with? Personally, for me, I feel we work best with the younger age group, and that's mainly due to the fact that we do have biological children that are quite young. I don't have experience parenting older kids at this stage of my life. My daughters are little moms and little nurturers, so they really enjoy taking care of the younger ones. And for me, we foster as a family, so I have to consider what is the best fit overall. Personally, the younger babies are a really good fit for our family because, for one, I don't need a lot of sleep. I mean, up until recently, my current foster daughter, who started sleeping through the night, like prior to that, in the past 3 years fostering, I think I can count on my fingers how many times I've actually slept through the night. But I don't require a lot of sleep. Like, at least if I get 5 hours, I'm good to go and I can function no problem, where some people can't, right? So I think I work well with that. And you know, when you're seeing babies that are going through withdrawal and that sort of thing, like my heart just really breaks for that. And that's just where I find I best serve in the foster care community. Her next question was, how do you feel about fostering older children? Now, from my last response, I don't want you to think that I don't want to foster older children, but in this point in my life, when my kids are still quite young, they're only 5 and 6, fostering kids younger than that works best for a family. In the future, I can definitely see us fostering older children as our biological children age. I also have no experience fostering kids, you know, that are older than 5 and 6, so I haven't dealt with all the, you know, the teenage hormones and all of that sort of stuff. So for me, I just feel good about parenting the ages I know best at this point in my life. Her next question was, how would you help a child who seems to have a hard time coping with their situation? I really only have experience with 2 children that are old enough that need kind of coping skills. All the other kids we have cared for, we've had 9, have been babies. 2.5-year-old we had was with us till she was a little over 3, and she had a really hard time coping with life in general. And then the 3.5-year-old little guy he also had a hard time coping. So the best way that I am able to help them is just to help talk them through it. A lot of distraction, a lot of fun, just giving them good positive memories about being in foster care, and really connecting with the biological parents as well. I truly believe that if you're going to be a foster parent, you have to be willing to support the biological parents. Not all kids reunify, but that is always the goal of foster care. So for our little guy, for example, we called his mom every single night before bed, you know, and having 4 kids, 4 and under at that time, that was really something that was difficult for me, and that was a stretch for me to do. But I made that a priority, that we made sure to call her every single night so that they could talk to her. She would read them a story. And that just really helped them to stay connected and help the kids to see that we were on the same team, that, you know, we were trying to help them get back with their mom. Our little 2.5-year-old little girl that we had, you know, she wasn't quite emotionally stable or emotionally mature enough to handle a lot of talking about her situation. It would just get her more upset. So for her, it was a lot of distraction, a lot of showing her pictures of her mom. Me and her mom would always talk before and after visits so she could see that we would have a connection. We talked about her mom and how much we missed her and acknowledged those feelings. Just overall tried to support her. Sometimes times were really hard and she just wanted to be alone and cry, and no matter what I said to her, she would just kind of get more and more upset. So sometimes I just had to let her kind of be sad and then just try and distract her and let her do something fun after a particularly emotional moment or emotional day. Her next question was, how do you go about connecting with them in the first few days? So in the first few days, it's really all about letting them get to know our family, letting them know that they're safe, letting them know that they're going to see their parents soon, because often it takes a few days before a visitation schedule is worked out. But just trying to let it be fun for them. For the age group that we foster, I think it takes them a few days to kind of realize what is going on and that they're not going back to their parents. So I actually find the first few days to be easier rather than harder, with the exception of our one little 2.5-year-old girl. She had already been moved from another foster home before coming to us, so she had a really hard first few days. But with our foster sons that we had, the 3.5-year-old and 18-month-old, they didn't understand yet that they weren't going back to see their mom. So we just made it fun and did lots of trips and park trips and going to the splash pad and, going to the zoo and just going to indoor playgrounds, like overall just making it really fun for them. I think if you have an older foster child, that's going to look a lot different, connecting with them and speaking with them. But just always letting them know that you support their mom, just trying to help their mom or their dad to get better so that they can get them back. I think the more open dialogue you have about them with their biological family really helps them to connect with you and not feel like they're necessarily in a stranger's house. It lets them know that you know their parents and that you're trying to help their parents. Her next question was, have you ever had kids who didn't bond with you? All of our kids have bonded with us. I think, again, because we take a younger age group, they're seeking that parental guidance. And sometimes, often they haven't had like a strong parental figure in their biological parents, someone who's actually taking care of them. They fend for themselves a lot of the time. So no, all of our foster kids have bonded to us quite easily, in my opinion. Her next question is, how do you feel about staying in touch with children once they leave your placement? I feel very passionately that the more adults that love these kids and help them through the trauma, the better. I work really hard at trying to make a relationship with the biological parents so that that can continue, but ultimately in the end, that's the biological family's decision. I also wanted to mention, sometimes it's really hard for the kids to see you after they've reunified. It triggers memories of their apprehension in the first place and being taken from their mom. So sometimes seeing them will bring that all back, and then they think, oh, I'm not going to see my mom again, like I'm going to have to leave her. So sometimes it's better to stay connected, but at a distance, watch them grow up, stay connected with their family until they're, emotionally able to handle seeing you again. And, in our case, we have only 2 out of the 8 kids, because when we have currently, only 2 out of the 8 kids we have in contact. Our first little guy, I still chat with his mom back and forth. And then our last placement, who was with us just under 6 months, we are still very involved in her life. She comes on vacation with us. She comes over for sleepovers, comes over to play. I have play dates with her mom, for example. I talk to her mom quite a bit. So we are still very much involved in her life. And I just think that's beautiful when that's able to happen. It was a little bit hard for her the first couple times. And sometimes she'll have things that trigger her being removed. And then she's scared that she doesn't get to see her mom again. But, she's almost 4 now, so we are able to talk it out with her a little bit more. And she knows she comes to see us, and she goes home. She still calls my biological daughters her sisters. She was with us when we brought our current foster daughter home right from the hospital as a new little sister. So she feels like that's her little baby sister as well. So it's just been really beautiful to be able to continue that relationship with her. It's kind of like an aunt and cousins relationship that we are to her now. But ultimately, a lot of times the biological parents don't want to remember, if they have turned their life around, they don't want to remember those hard times when they were in foster care. So I have kept in touch with most of them when they first go home, but over time those relationships have just drifted, which is sad because you miss them and you want to know how they're growing. But I think as much as possible, the more you can remain in your previous foster children's lives, the better. The next question she asked, what are some of the things you like to do to bond with your foster kids? I like to take them out shopping when they first come, if they're old enough, and let them pick out some things, some new toys, bedding for their bed. Just let them kind of take ownership of their new space in this strange home that they're in. I find that kind of first shopping trip, I did it with both of our 2 older foster children, it really helped them to bond and feel kind of safe. again, because the kids that we foster are typically quite a bit younger, it's just kind of reading stories, playing with them, just being there for them and constantly being a support for them, helping them when they have hard times, kind of giving in to things that they want, because especially in the beginning, like, you know, there's certain things that might not necessarily be things we do or rules we follow in our house, but just letting them be comfortable. You know, for example, unhealthy meals and McDonald's, like some of the kids coming into care, they are not used to having any sort of healthy, nutritious meals. It's a lot of junk. One of our foster kiddos, the note on their file was that they ate Cheetos and drank chocolate milk out of a bottle for many of their meals. So just allowing that in the beginning and slowly trying to transition and not, you know, pushing and forcing healthy eating habits on them. You know, things like that. Just trying to minimize the stress and minimize the trauma as much as possible. I find that helps to bond with them. Just letting them do what they did before, but in your home, and then slowly trying to introduce them to healthier options or, you know, better choices. Last question, and she said she gets asked about this a ton, is what are some of your suggestions about what to do to make a child feel comfortable when they first get placed with you? So I've talked about this before. If you've been around my channel for a while, I have a couple videos on it, but I think if the foster child is older, having a photo album of pictures of the house and little blurbs about what you do in those rooms, like this is the living room where we play games and, you know, watch TV and play with our toys, and this is the bathroom where, you know, we get clean and we have baths every night and brush our teeth. And just as basic as it sounds, just having a little book that they can reference when, you know, maybe they're in their room at night feeling alone, feeling scared, something that they can look through. I think that's a really great tool to help them feel a little bit more comfortable. Talking to them as much as possible, but also respecting their space, especially if they're older. I think respecting their space, respecting their feelings, and not trying to push anything on them, especially in the beginning, is really important. Again, taking them shopping, not only does that help with the bonding, but I think that really helps them to feel more comfortable. Taking them shopping and allowing them to pick out some things to personalize their space, pick out some clothes that they like, pick out some toys that they like, or books, that sort of thing if they're older. But, you know, not pushing too much, kind of letting them be, but just letting them know that you're always there for them, that you're supporting their biological family. I think the worst thing you can do for a foster child is not talk about their biological family and not feel like you're supporting them, you know, to make them feel bad about where they came from. I think a lot of times, especially older foster children, will feel guilt and shame. So trying to minimize those feelings as much as possible. As far as what they call you, just connecting with them, letting them know your name. You're not expecting them to call you mom and dad. You are not their mom and dad. If that's what they want to call you once they've been with you for a while, then so be it. But just kind of letting them lead. As foster parents, we tend to be, you know, emotionally stable adults, and the kids are the ones that have all the trauma. So just kind of working on their schedule, letting them decide when they want to do things, you know, that sort of thing. Not pushing too much on them in the beginning, and not, you know, forcing your rules, maybe rules that they've never had to follow before. I've heard stories where kids would play 8 to 10 hours of video games all day long. And that's obviously, you know, not the best thing for them, but that's what they're used to. So allowing a lot of screen time in the beginning if that's what they're used to, and then slowly introducing, you know, better options or healthier things, or, you know, different things to do that are going to help their brain grow and develop. But just overall kind of letting them lead and just trying to make them as comfortable as possible.
I really hope you guys found this video helpful. I hope that we could answer any of your questions that you might have been having about foster care. So I think this is good to kind of get a foster kid's perspective along with a foster parent's perspective. So that covers a lot of ground. But if you do have any questions that we didn't answer, please feel free to let us know. I think we're both very strongly wanting to help people through this process, and a lot of times there's not a whole lot of support out there for people in foster care or foster parents, so we're trying to do our best to help you guys in any way that we possibly can. I just want to say thank you guys so much for, if you're foster parents, for trying to do your research and trying to learn and trying to be the best that you can be. I really wish you the best of luck in your journey, and I thank you so much for the support you've given me and given my channel. So with that said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye!